Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And greetings to everyone. On behalf of the speakers and supporters, I want to thank all of you for being here today. My name is Jamil Alam Johnson, and I'm the president of the Prince George's County Muslim Council, a civic organization here in the county. On a daily basis, we are heartbroken hearing about the continued humanitarian crisis that has been created by the war in Gaza. The number of innocent civilians, men, women, and most sadly, children that have been killed, injured, are homeless, and are starving to death is staggering. Human decency requires us to do whatever we can to end it. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him, the messenger of Allah taught us, if you see something wrong, stop it with your hands. If you cannot do that, speak out against it. And if you cannot do that, hate it in your heart. But that is the least of faith. We don't have the ability to stop it with our hands. But if we can go beyond hating it in our hearts by using our voices, and we ask our elected officials on every level, federal, state, and county, to use their voices, individually and collectively, to call for an immediate, lasting ceasefire where humanitarian aid can be provided to those who remain and a future for everyone can be envisioned. This is not about politics. It's about saving lives. At this time, I would like to introduce our host today, Reverend Krishnan Naidoo of Hemingway Memorial AME Church. Pastor Chris.
Bless the Lord. First of all, let me say I am so excited that so many have chose to gather for this most significant situation. For those who have come to speak and those that say, you know, I just want my presence here, that my presence would be known. I thank each and every one of you. For everybody that worked to bring us together, I say thank you. There's no way that we weren't going to open our doors, because this is not a Christian or Muslim or a Jewish thing. This is a humanitarian thing. And because it's a human thing, then we must extend compassion. And compassion must ring out for the least of these. But who is the least of these? I would dare say that the least of these might be a baby that lost its life. It might be the over 10,000 children that are now gone. It might be a woman who has to be giving birth without anesthesia. It might be somebody who can't get water or food or health care, or they can't have basic necessities, and now they are found over 1 million homeless. At some point, whatever you believe, you got to know that at some time enough is enough. And I just come here in solidarity with men and women of different faiths, believing in one thing, the human race. And in believing in that, I believe that every life must matter. Matter in the same way that our own children matter. Matter in the same way that our husbands and wives matter. Matter in the same way that our neighbors and loved ones and doctors and teachers matter. Matter like the restaurant worker at your favorite spot who knows your order. Everybody must matter. And so we collectively are calling on a ceasefire. We're calling on a release of hostages. We're calling for PEACE. We're calling on peace because humanity needs peace. Peace which surpasses all understanding. To guard our hearts and minds. peace for all humanity. Ceasefire, not later, now.
Thank you, Reverend Natison. Now, to bring us closer to the issue, we've asked our brother Mahir Kama, who is a native Palestinian, to come up and speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Jamil. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity and for hosting this event, Pastor. I am a Palestinian, so I want to start by telling you that the plight of the Palestinian people started in 1948. It did not start on October 7. Gaza has been the largest concentration camp for the last 17 years. People have been deprived employment, education, transportation, healthcare, and all of the basics. The children of Gaza that have lived over the last 20 years have endured at least gone through 5 wars. They have been drinking polluted water for at least 17 years. So right from the get-go, the Israeli officials started calling for nuking Gaza and that the people of Palestine are subhuman people. They are human animals. They have done massive destruction on the infrastructure. They destroyed places of worship. They destroyed all hospitals, 37 hospitals. They destroyed all universities. They destroyed all libraries, all monuments, you name it. There's no safe place for people in Gaza today. And the civilians are even buried without dignity. Their beloved are finding them under the rubble if they are lucky to find them. The starvation has gotten to be Israel's very preferred style of killing those people who are shown resilience. So now the United Nations is saying that Gaza is dealing with level 5 famine, meaning that people don't have any idea where their next meal is going to be coming from. So starvation is going on. That's why the people of Gaza are eating bird seeds and they are eating barley, the food that they should be given to cows to feed on. During the month of Ramadan, where people are fasting throughout the day, they truly have been fasting for the last 6 months. There has been collective punishment by all means for everybody. Everybody is suffering, you name it. The airdroppings that the United States and other countries have started is barely touching the basic needs of the people of Gaza. However, when the U.S. is struggling dropping enough food for people, they are dropping arms and weapons on a daily basis. And Israel is allowed to do that without any problem. Israel is blocking humanitarian aid. There are thousands of truckers waiting outside outside Gaza, waiting to come in, bring in basic and very important medical necessities, but they cannot bring it in because Israel decided that people of Gaza have to starve and to die in 2024. They have stopped the funding of UNRWA, that supports a lot of Palestinians with basic needs. And yesterday, the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestinian occupied territories came out and said, it's a genocide. It's nothing except a genocide. So if anybody has any doubt about it, it's a genocide by all what it means. We're very happy that Canada has decided to stop the sending arms to Israel, and we're hoping that our money as taxpayers are going to be spent here with our poor and homeless people rather than killing the children of Gaza. The final thing that I want to tell you that the struggle of the people of Gaza is nothing different than the struggle of the Afro-American community or the Jews. It's the same thing. And if we allow this brutality, this genocide to go on, just watch what's going to be happening in the world in like 20 and 30 years. This is going to be a jungle. So let's call for ceasefire, let's have him stop it, and let's have decency settle in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brother Mahir. Our next speaker is the Reverend Tony Lee of Community of Hope, AME.
My brothers and my sisters, I am Reverend Tony Lee, the pastor of the Community of Hope AME Church. And we come here many different faith traditions, but one humanity. And we come singing in one choir. That's the choir of peace. That is the choir of justice. That many people will say, well, Reverend, what can your one voice do in something that's so big? For all of these folks who are with us, what can your one voice do for a challenge that's so great? For these young people sitting on this front row, what can your voice do for a challenge that stretches across the oceans? But the reality is, one voice may not be able to do it, but your voice plus my voice plus your voice can make a difference in this world. That when we come together as a great choir of humanity, then we can make a difference. And what we are asking for today is for our public officials to join the choir. What we're asking today is for our state legislators and our county council members and our public officials to join the choir calling for ceasefire and humanitarian aid. The reality is that public policy is not just a political statement, but it's a moral affirmation. And there is no way that we can allow ourselves to be complicit to genocide. There's no way that we can allow our resources to be complicit to genocide. There's no way that we can allow our tax dollars to be complicit to genocide. There's no way that we can allow our funds to be able to be used for more bombs to be dropped on children and babies and families. There's no way that we can allow ourselves to abdicate our responsibility to say something to make sure that humanitarian aid is able to go into Gaza and our Palestinian brothers and sisters are able to have the basic needs that are needed for survival. Let us be clear, it is genocide, and let us be clear, if we do not let our voices be heard, we are complicit and history will judge us. And I believe that God will judge us. I believe that there will be a reckoning and there will be a time that we shall answer for how we stood in this moment. And I believe that the choir is going to be able to lift up our heads and said that we sang for justice and we sang for righteousness and we proclaim peace all over the world. God bless you.
Thank you, Reverend Lee. Our next speaker is the Reverend Whitlock from Reed Temple AME.
We want to give God praise for Councilwoman Blagay for gathering us together. Let's give God praise for that. My name is Mark Whitlock with Reed Temple African Methodist Episcopal Church. This is the week of Passover. This is the Passion Week for the Christians. This certainly abuts certainly Ramadan. This is a moment where we come together and we celebrate peace. We celebrate the deliverance. We celebrate hope. Yet, if you look at what's taking place since October the 7th, over 32,000 people have been killed. Over 230 people have been incarcerated. There are people that are hungry. There are people that are starving. There are people that are hurting. We must, if as religious leaders, practice that what we preach. If we're not doing that, then we're making a mistake. So therefore, we're calling for every evangelical. We're calling for every Christian. We're calling for every Muslim. We're calling for every Jew. We're calling for everybody to practice that which we preach. We're calling for a wholesale ceasefire because the God of Jehovah Shalom says we must practice a peace that passes all understanding. If not we, then who? If not when, then when? We must do what God tells us to do because we are people of God, and therefore we become the biggest hypocrites in the world if we can't do what God has told us to do. Let peace be realized, and let us cease fire today, tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives.
I think it's clear. I think it's clear. Our next speaker will be Imam Teslim Gali from the Sierra Leone Muslim Jamaat.
Assalamu alaikum. Ramadan Mubarak. I thank PGCMC President Jamil Johnson and the host church for this opportunity. I want us in this room to reflect on what is often said about America and our presidents. State officials will say, and this lately is being said over the rounds of iftar in the holy month of Ramadan that we are in, We have had that enough. Presidents of the United States will say this. Average citizens of this country, like I am, like we all are, know this. What is being said often about America and our presidents. The United States is the most powerful country in the world, and the US president is the most important and powerful person of the free world. The United States, prioritizes freedom, promotes democracy, and protects human rights around the world. And it's central to our foreign policy. These are the virtues that are captured in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The United States holds economic, political, and cultural influence across the planet. You all will be wondering where I'm getting with this. On the current conflict, President Biden has said, unquote, a lot of innocent people are starving. A lot of innocent people are struggling and are dying. A lot of innocent people go without food every day, and it's got to stop, unquote. I don't think anybody can look at what is currently happening and the Israeli government doing what they're doing in Gaza and say it's not over the top. An hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam translation says, help your brother, whether he's an oppressor or he is being oppressed. The companions will ask him, and they did ask him, we can understand when somebody is oppressed, we are there to help him. But what about when he is the oppressor? In answering to that, he says, prevent him from oppressing others. We call on the President, the House, and the Senate, our officials, to stop Netanyahu now. President Biden can give the ultimatum to Bibi Netanyahu and say this is enough and it's got to stop. Because after all, he is the most powerful person in the free world. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Imam. Our next speaker and one of our key and hardest working organizers is Sister Rahila Emad, former member of the Board of Education.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Rahila Emad, and I'm a former Prince George's County Board of Education member. I'm here today on behalf of 28 brave current and former elected officials in the county, many of whom are here today to publicly announce our support for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Palestine. This afternoon, we sent a letter to our county officials asking them to also take public action. The letter states, and I quote, Dear County Executive Also Brooks, Chair Ivey, Vice Chair Harrison, and esteemed members of the County Council, over the last 6 months, we've seen abhorrent and tragic use of our tax dollars supporting mass displacement, bombardment, imprisonment, starvation, and murder of Palestinian people. People across the country and the world are protesting this unbelievable violence on Palestine's 2 million civilians, many of whom are women and children, directly calling out the actions of the Israeli government as apartheid, occupation, and genocide, and asking our elected representatives on all levels to take a stand. We, the undersigned current and former elected officials in Prince George's County, take a public stance in favor of an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Palestine. We are asking you to join us in doing the same. Please come together to support peace and take a unified public stance supporting a ceasefire. Know that by speaking up, you will not be alone. Recently, the Cheverly Town Council and the Tacoma Park City Council passed a ceasefire resolution. From Maryland, at least one U.S. Senator, 3 county executives, 3 members of Congress, and the governor support a ceasefire. This state legislative session, 8 Maryland state delegates and 1 Maryland state senator brought forward a resolution entitled HJ2 SJ5 supporting a long-term ceasefire in Israel and Palestine. 2/3 of these state legislators represent Prince George's County. All of these officials understand, like we do, that Palestinian people deserve the basic human decency to live. A permanent and immediate ceasefire is necessary for that. Please stand with us together for peace, dignity, and justice. Support a ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Rahila. Now we talk about the ceasefire resolution. So our next speaker is going to be most apropos, good segue, State Delegate Gabriel Aavo.
Good evening, and thank you to all of the organizers of today's action. I want to say, as a proud AME Christian, I want to thank Reverend Nathan and all of the reverends from AME churches across our state who are not just showing up and standing in solidarity with Palestinians, but really exemplifying the kind of faith leadership that we need to see across all faiths and not just the Christian faiths. As a representative that represents, quite frankly, a district that has a high population of Muslim and Arab Marylanders, I understand not only that this conflict is being felt right here, but it is important for us to send a very clear message, not just to Marylanders across this state, but across this country, what our values are, where we stand, and what we're not willing to tolerate. And so this legislative session, I was proud to introduce House Joint Resolution 2 that called for a permanent ceasefire, not just in Israel, but occupied Palestine, not only calling for the release of Israeli hostages, but it is important for us to highlight the thousands of Palestinian detainees, not prisoners, detainees who are being held in Israeli jails without charge or trial. And as we talk about the release of Israeli hostages, let us not forget those Palestinians who are languishing behind Israeli jails and have no semblance of justice whatsoever. We want to ensure that there is unimpeded humanitarian aid into Gaza, but we also have to keep an eye on what is taking place in the West Bank. We cannot become so focused on what is taking place in Gaza that we ignore the atrocities that are being committed in the West Bank and the thousands of illegal settlements that are being built and approved on Palestinian land, not only a violation of international law, but our own Department of State guidelines. It is time that we see this leadership at every single level of government. If public officials can say Ramadan Mubarak, they can say ceasefire now, and they can show up. They can show up, and they can show the kind of a leadership that is desperately needed in this moment. This is a moment of moral justice. This is a moment of where you stand. And I refuse to be complicit in a genocide that is not just taking place, but our tax dollars are funding. Because there is a concerted effort to normalize the killing and displacement of Palestinians as unavoidable and even necessary. But as people of faith, people of conscience, we know that all human life is precious and that we want to see a ceasefire and we want to see peace, not just in this region, but an end to the occupation. Sisters and brothers, let's continue to show up. Let's continue to disrupt, to agitate, and ensure that we are matching our values with our dollars, and we're calling for a ceasefire. We're ending the funding of an apartheid state, and I'm proud to see the AME Church calling for that. And we need to see more leaders, not just in elective or public office, but across all society, standing against this genocide and this injustice that is taking place in Gaza, in the West Bank, and against Palestinians. So as long as I am here, I want you all to know that I am not an ally, but a co-conspirator for Palestinians and for justice, and we'll continue to demand and work towards that. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Delegate. And we're going to continue with the elected officials, with our county council member and one of the leaders on this issue, Council Member Rahila Emad.
Brothers and sisters, I just want to tell you all today, I cannot be silent. And that is why I'm here today, because I will tell you this, I don't think that there's no reason that we should not all, in the United States, everywhere here, saying, cease fire now. Let me hear you repeat it. Cease fire now. I will tell you, my heart has been burning about this because my first advocacy, people don't know that, was in the 90s when there was a Liberian Civil War. We walked down the hallways of the DC Council. I came to Paris Glendenning's office as a kid with my parents, begging our elected officials to get involved and put pressure on the United States to interfere as a powerhouse to a country that needed help because my family was dying. I understand it because it's in me. And I will tell you now, when I look at what's happening in Gaza, I see my family. I see the fact that as a kid, as a 5-year-old, we were walking down the hall pleading, asking people, please, put pressure on the government, intervene because you have the power. We are in a country with power and we need to raise our voices. So I'm doing this because now I'm in a position where people can walk down the hall and talk to me. And I heard you all, and I said in a meeting with the Muslim community, I said, I am going to support a ceasefire, and I cannot remain silent. Ceasefire now. And I would just say this, I call on all of the elected officials on the council, the county executive, every council to support Councilwoman Oriata and I in putting forth a resolution to make sure that we demand ceasefire now. And I don't think that it should be an issue. It should be issued to no one on the council. Don't let them tell you that the budget is going to be the issue. It's not an issue. This is not an Israel versus Palestinian issue. This is a humanitarian issue. When you have over 30,000 people being killed, cease fire now. When you have over 80,000 people missing in Gaza, cease fire now. When you have 8,000 kids that have been killed and injured, cease fire now. We don't need to wait. I ask you all to put pressure on every elected official because I myself cannot remain quiet. I was not quiet when I was 5, when I was walking down the hallway with my parents, putting pressure on elected officials to do just what I'm asking others to do, and I cannot remain silent. I am going to support a ceasefire resolution. I ask you all to put pressure on every elected official, tell them to join Councilwoman Oriata and I in putting forth a resolution. We need 6 votes. I need you all to call people and get 6 votes because I cannot sit down and watch 8,000 kids killed, over 78,000 people being missing, injured, over 30,000 people being killed and sit silently. I'm sorry that it's taken me this long. I wanted to do this long time ago. But I want to thank all of you all that kept saying, I need the votes, I need the votes. I need the votes. But we need to make an actual statement. There should be more people. Every elected official is in the room. If anybody's asking for your vote, tell them, if you care about people, if you care about peace, if you care about humanity, if you're sitting here talking about the violence in our community and you can't say ceasefire now, what is the deal? Who are you here for? Are you here for humanity and people, or are you here for yourself? So what I'm going to say, let's say it again. Ceasefire now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And our next speaker is her colleague, Crystal Oriana, member of the County Council of Prince George's County.
Thank you. For me, like so many people said before, this isn't political. This has nothing to do with politics. This has everything to do with people, everything to do with the humanity of our country. And as a Christian, there is no way that my faith will allow me to sit silently from any position of power that God graces me with. I have to be called to scream and yell and demand justice, demand peace, demand the love that God calls for me to have. And the reality is that so many people in positions of power are claiming to be something they're not. Claiming a faith, claiming a morality, claiming a value that I cannot see. I can't see it in their actions. I can't see it in their policy. I can't see it in their decisions. Yeah. I see it in tweets, in posters, in slogans, and in phrases. But this is a moment for them to stand in action. This is a moment that will be etched in our history. And I ask every single person, because this is what I do for every policy or decision that comes before me, I close my eyes and I just imagine for 1 second. I imagine whatever decision I'm making and whoever it impacts, that's my mother, that's my father, that's my partner, and now that is my son. I have a 5-month-old baby. And I was standing when my council member, Blagay, was speaking in tears because I imagined being a mother holding their dying child. I imagined it for a moment, and it crippled me. It crippled me. It pushed me, it motivated me, it angered me. And that is what we're asking our elected officials to do, to close your eyes and imagine. We all felt a glimpse in 9/11, a glimpse. And we know what our country felt and how we mourned and how we cried and how we won't forget and how we go visit and how we remember. But imagine that daily, no cease, no sleep. Magnify it in your brains. Hold it with you daily and use that in every decision that you make. Imagine 9/11 on this soil every day and look at those people and say, you can do nothing. Look at them and say, you can do nothing. And imagine those people we lost. And imagine your family. And imagine your faith and your morals and judgment day in every decision you make. And I know that when they do it, they will join us and say, ceasefire now.
Right.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You know, what you just said is, that's often the same way I think of things. I take a look at, even if somebody's child is running around the masjid when we're trying to pray, they're driving me crazy. I think about when my babies were their size, and I feel a little bit better about it, because they're just babies, right? So last but not least, I want to invite to the microphone, even though I don't live in his city, he's my mayor, Fazl Kabir of College Park.
Good evening, everyone. I want to begin by thanking the organizers and the faith leaders with me today to bring peace to the people who need peace. My name is Fazl Kabir. I have the privilege to serve the residents of College Park as the mayor. You know, a genocide is taking place in Palestine, period. More than 32,000 people have been killed, and majority of them are women and children. 1 million people don't have any homes. Their homes completely destroyed. And people who are surviving, they are facing more bombing and destruction and starvation because of the lack of access to food, water, and medicine. That is awful. You know, what is more awful and more sad, this genocide is being funded by our tax dollars. Do you agree? And it is being done in our names, sadly. You know, what happened in October 7 was wrong, but what is happening right now in Palestine and Gaza is a collective punishment which is very wrong, which is not acceptable. So I ask with my community, with elected officials and the faith leaders with me, to the county council members, to be on the right side of the history. This is not the time to be silent. This is not the time to be not active. We need to speak up. And I ask them to sign the peace ceasefire resolution. This is the only right thing to do. And I want to thank our two council members for supporting it, and we'll be supporting you. We'll be on your side. Thank you for doing it. So with that, I'd like to ask you to say one more time, ceasefire now.
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now!
Ceasefire now!
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Councilman. We're going to wrap up now, but we do want to give people, you know, it's one thing to do these things, but the important thing is to take action. Because each of us, even though, like I said, we may have small individual voices, when those voices come together, they make a huge difference. So, Sister Rahila, can you mention where they can take the action in regards to contacting their county council members? And you need to do this for all your elected officials. At least you will have done what you should have done.
Yes, there's a couple of different options for action for folks. In the back, there is a sign with a bit.ly link where you can complete a letter writing action to federal officials that represent us in Prince George's County. There's also another action which you can lobby directly the county council members and the county executive to introduce and support a ceasefire resolution. The QR code for that will be available after this press briefing. So those are two ways, and there's multiple other different ways on the state level that you can support. And in those, you know, you can follow up with me or any one of the folks here to be able to figure out how to take further action. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Rahila. I think at this point, we're going to close out the press conference. We thank each of you for coming. We thank each of you for taking your time out to be here. And most importantly, we thank each of you for caring. Because this is what this is all about. You know, she mentioned, Councilwoman Oriata mentioned her child. And now I see this little baby bouncing in the background with their beautiful voice being heard. Too many of those voices have been silenced. And so we need, for the sake of our own souls, because that's what it's really about, we're going to have to answer for what we did or did not do one day. Some people don't believe it, but I think everybody in here knows that. So you want to go being able to say, hey, this is what I did when people were in trouble. Thank you. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thanks, everybody.